Hello, back at the MCI bus again. Yes, so the channel's Scattered Rusty Projects. I jump from one thing to another thing and then to the next thing. But here we are at the MCI, MC7. It's in my shop, and luckily the shop has a pit. So I can get under the bus without any fear of air suspension bleeding down and trapping me and crushing me. So what we're doing today is let me try to shine some light down here, but yeah, this is the pit. And so what we're doing today is I've replaced one power steering hose under here because I was looking around, you know, I wanted to do some work on the bus since I'm here, and I was looking around and well, I was going to work on the brakes because they've got some leaks, but didn't do that yet because I just recently, a few weeks ago, just driving around in my parking lot, one of the ones that's up in front blew right underneath, right above the spare tire. There's a couple hoses there, and it about jerked the wheel out of my hands because without the power assist, it really can fight back. But anyway, these hoses are, this is probably was installed by MCI. I did the first one, and I said, well, this might make a good video because even though it's right here under the bus, I'm standing in the pit. I mean, this is as far up as I can reach. It's not easy to get to. There's a drive shaft, big drive shaft in the way, and I tried to loosen that fitting up there with the second hose. Actually, it's the one on the left, but because that's the one I'm going to replace next. So we're gonna go through that together here. I decided the first one was kind of difficult, and we'll talk about hoses. I make hydraulic hose at my shop, and so I'll show you this hose. We'll talk about it and make up a new one and get it installed. So here we go. All right, so good. 1 inch on the swivel and 7/8 on the what it connects to, the male that it connects to. But of course, the drive shaft's in the way a bit. Let me try to reposition these to get it where I can. All right, that wasn't so bad. All right, we'll let that drain out. All right, so this is not easy to get to. This is as far as I can reach, and you know, I can try to push on it this way, but it really needs some support on the other fitting because you can actually break the other fitting if it gets too much force put on it. So climbing up a stool here to try and get up in here and see if we can find a good position on this. Oh man. Let's see if I can just do it by itself, even though I... Holy moly! That thing is on there good. That's why I think MCI put it on, because it is so darn tight. Alright, well, I'll have to hit it with the torch. That should be enough heat to break it free. Yeah, there it goes. I think. Yep. Oh boy, it's still tight. Yeah, and this one's gonna probably be tight every turn until it comes off. Oh, well, it's freeing up a little bit. It's a lot better to do this now than say, well, it's not leaking, let me just get on the road, take a trip, you know, and then try to get underneath the bus and then try to find somebody that does hydraulic hose out on the road somewhere. I mean, there's lots of places that do hydraulic hose, but for me, it's a lot cheaper to do it in my shop. Ouch! That drip was hot. One drip came out and it was hot. There we go. All right. Get that one off of there. All right, let's just kind of mock it up for the fitment. Yeah, it's okay. Okay. So we're going to bring this hose over to the bench and make a new one. All right, here's the hose. Bring it over to the hydraulic hose station. Okay, so first we're gonna measure the hose. I got a tape measure set out here, laying on the bench. And let's see, move this over a little bit. So then we want to flatten this out and see how long it is. And it overall length measures 26, so it's 26 overall. And of course, what I do is, see, the other one measured 26 and a half. I always write it down, so this way somebody starts talking to me or the phone rings, or I just start thinking about something else. I'll have it written down and know that's what it should be, so I don't have to go measure it again. So this hose that came off the bus, you can see how rusty it is here. Matter of fact, the first one that I took off, it actually broke apart. Not only was the braid really rusted, but the rubber is really hard as well. Just it gets brittle. And you know, the problem with having a rusted braid is it won't hold the pressure, because the braid is the backbone of the hose. That's what holds all the pressure in. And this is probably an original hose, which is, you know, over 50 years old by now. And being one of the ones in front burst because the braid got rusted. It's only a matter of time before one of these was going to go. And then of course it's in a lot harder space to get to if you're on the side of the road somewhere. So they definitely need to get done now. Well, let me show you what we do on verifying the fitting here. So looking at it, to me it looks like what they call a JIC fitting. And so what I'll do is I'll take a male JIC that I think is the correct size and thread it in. And yes, I was correct on that. It is a number 10, which number 10 is 5/8 JIC. But the hose itself, after looking at the doing the first hose, it's a 1/2-inch hose. So we have a jump size here of a 1/2-inch hose to a 5/8 fitting. So yeah, so we get the fittings for it, which one will be a 90, and then the other one is a straight fitting. And the hose we're going to use, we use Gates brand of hose, and this is one of their newer lines of hose, the MXT series, and it's good for 4,000 psi, which is probably more than double what the system needs. But it's fine. We've got the hose in stock, and there's no problem with going overboard. You know, the power steering system is probably, I would suspect, maybe 1,000 or probably no more than 1,500 psi as it operates. It might even be under 1,000. So this hose is going to be more than sufficient. I wouldn't say it's overkill, because it is a single wire hose, is a heavy duty single. Putting a 2-wire hose in would also be appropriate. I guess if you really got to overkill, using a 4-wire hose would be way too much. But so the other thing here, when we're putting a fitting on the new hose, take and measure out here like this, to see how far engagement we need to get. So then it goes all the way down to my thumb, and we know we have the hose fully engaged in the fitting. So when it gets crimped, there's no worries about it blowing off. So after we make the mark on for setting the hose length of where to cut, we will make the cut. So what you'll notice here is when we make the cut, we get a bunch of debris in the hose. And not only is it rubber, but it's also metal from the steel braid inside the hose. and that is not anything that you would want to circulate in your hydraulic system, as it's going to get into the pump, it's going to get into cylinders, it's going to get into other valving and cause accelerated wear or damage. So what we like to do is clean all that out. Now we'll clean it out right now, and then after both ends are crimped, I'll blow it out again. A lot of times if you go to like an auto parts store, they don't have any source of compressed air or any means of cleaning out the debris inside a hydraulic hose, and so that needs to be done before you install it. It needs to be blown out or flushed out. Otherwise you're introducing this grit into the system, and when you're putting on a hose, that's post filter, so it's not that it's going to get caught in the filter, because it's already introduced midway down the line. So it's just, you got to get it out of there. Yeah, see that? Even more stuff comes out. So I like to blow out the hose with compressed air. And then I'll do it again after both ends are crimped, just to make sure to get it good, get rid of all the grit of all the hoses that I make for people. I certainly don't want to introduce grit into their system, and you know, where they have a problem later on. But in the end, it's up to whoever's installing the hose to make sure that it's clean. Now the other thing that I like to do is, so a lot of times these hoses, they develop a natural bend for the way that they relax in there. And then of course a hose that comes off the reel or off a coil of hose on the floor is also going to have a natural bend. So for the guys that are installing the hose, one of the things I like to do when there's a 90-degree fitting is orient that fitting to the natural bend of the hose that will mimic the way the hose is going to fit in the most relaxed position, to make installation easier. It's not such a big deal when you get these smaller, really flexible hoses, but when you get some really big hose like this 1.25-inch hose, it gets 6 braids of wire in it to hold 5,000 psi with an 1.25-inch inner diameter, and this hose does not flex very easy at all, and it certainly has no twist to it. We're going to crimp it here, and on the gate system, you have a chart, and so this is the older lines of hoses, but I wrote in up here the 8 MXT hose, and which die to use, and then where to set the indicator or the digital readout. So right around, oh, come on, this thing, sometimes it doesn't move very much and then it jumps a whole lot, but it's pretty darn close to where it needs to be. 730 is the reading that I came up with to get the correct crimp spec on this. So 740 is going to be just fine. So we lift it up. We have the correct die. It calls for a 733 die. We have the correct die in there. Put the hose up in there, and Gates wants a full crimp on this. You know, some of the other manufacturers of hydraulic hose want you to leave a bump in the end, but Gates does not. And it also, I think, it gives a better finish if it doesn't have that bump, because if you got to feed the hose through a narrow area, that bump can actually cause a hang-up. So we'll put it in there and hit the button. Now I like to go part way and then turn it, because it starts developing lines in the fitting. It might be hard to see there. It starts developing lines, and on the smaller hoses, those can actually stick out kind of far, which I don't like. So get that full crimp, put it back in here, and now we're on top of the lines. Go the rest of the way, and it stops on its own because of where we set it. And now we have a crimped end, and you can see the difference between the two. This one's crimped and this one is not yet crimped. Feed this up through here. And there we go. Go part way. And then finish it off. Go part way, turn it to cover the lines, and then finish it off. So before we go over to the bus, we're going to blow this out with air from both sides. And that works pretty good on getting any debris out of the hose. Alright, so here we are back underneath. It's actually dripping out of there and making a puddle on the floor. But, oops, just kicked over my stool. All right. And we'll get the lower side threaded in. Okay. Yeah, this is, I wouldn't say this is the most comfortable place to be, but you know, I guess here in the shop is a lot better than on the side of the road, because if we're on the side of the road, then I got to get underneath the bus on the ground, which I'm not really a fan of doing that. I can't get both. Can't get both hands up here on the same side of the drive shaft, but I think this is pretty tight. Yeah. All right. So that part is done. Now for the lower part. And so I think this is 1 1/16. Yeah. Alright, so we're going to need a wrench to support the torque. There, that's tight. Okay, good. All right, one last thing. So refilling the power steering system, MCI makes it moderately convenient because the power steering reservoir is way back there. if I can get the camera in without creating a shadow. Yeah, that thing there is the reservoir. However, they have a pipe that comes off it up to this here with this plug, and taking out that plug, just put the power steering fluid down here to fill up that reservoir. So it's not that far in on the engine, so it's just, like I said, it's not right up front, but it's moderately convenient to fill it. And I use ATF in there. I don't actually know what it calls for, but for me ATF is going to work just fine, has been working just fine, and it's a lot cheaper than power steering fluid. So that's what I've been using. One of the next things on the project list is rebuilding the DD3 style brake actuators for the rear brakes. So I got this one apart, and it's got a lot of pieces, and it's not like the truck ones that they're just kind of throwaway and you replace them and they're cheap. These DD3 chambers are not cheap, and they need to be rebuilt. I got these new diaphragms from Luke at US Coach in New Jersey, and thought I was going to be able to get away with just putting diaphragms in it, but after getting it apart, there are more bits and pieces that it needs, more seals, bushings. It's got a broken stud, and the other stud is whittled down from rust, and those are the studs that hold the brake can onto the bus. So if they're weak and they're gonna break, then I'll lose brakes on that wheel. But anyway, that's coming up. I'll be putting together a video for the brake chamber. This one, of course, I already have it apart, so I'm gonna go through the process on this. But on the other side there, I'll film that so we can watch you know, how the DD3 chamber is rebuilt. We'll see you then.